Hello and welcome to the mill. I am your host Dusty Crane, and today I'm going to show you how to solo Libertalia Winds of Galecrest. It's probably easiest to break the setup into two parts, the before each game setup and the before each voyage setup. So let's start with the before each game setup since you'll only have to do that once. First, you're going to choose which side of the board you want to play on, calm or stormy. As with the standard game, you can choose to play an Uncharted game by picking any mixed combination of calm and stormy tiles. For my example though, I'm going to set up using the calm side of the game board. Next, I'm going to grab 7 loot tiles. You're going to want to make sure that 4 of them are the ones that specifically show the Automa Factory logo. Next, I'm going to lay them out like this. The reason for doing that is because it illustrates the Automa's preference for taking loot. That is, the top 3 tiles are considered good loot, the 3 directly beneath them are considered average loot, and the single purple relic tile indicates bad loot. Now grab the reputation tokens. We're going to set this up like a 2-player game, even though the Pilferer is going to make it more like a 3-player game. Automa is always going to play purple, so set that reputation marker aside. And then go ahead and choose the color that you would like to play with and set that aside too. You can put the 4 remaining tokens on the reputation track in the 1, 2, 5, and 6 position. Since this does determine starting income, you'll want to randomize whether you or the Automa end up in the 3 or 4 spot. I just put both tokens in my hand and shake until one falls out. That one for me goes into the 3 spot, but you can randomize that however you see fit. In any case, we're going to start along with the Automa right there in the center of the reputation track. Go ahead and give you and the Automa your own treasure trackers, or scoring dials if you will, as well as a graveyard tile. You'll get the same deck of 40 cards that you do in a regular game, but the Automa is going to get the solo deck, which will serve a dual purpose role of being both the Automa cards and the Pilferer cards. Ultimately, you can decide how you want to handle what level you're playing on. You can decide up front and adjust the scoring dial as necessary to give you the difficulty level you want, or you can wait until the end of the game to see if it was a swashbuckler win or a landlubber defeat. It's your game. You're playing against yourself. Do what feels right to you. Let's move into the before each voyage setup. You'll do this 3 times in total in each game, so this part will become second nature in no time. With our reputation decided, award your voyage beginning doubloons. If you're here in the right spot, you're starting with 9 doubloons, and if you're a little more infamous here on the left spot, you're starting with 10 doubloons. The first voyage takes place over 4 days, the second over 5, and the third over 6. The game board indicates which days are populated with loot, so consult the board if you forget. Voyage 1, though, is 4 days, so go ahead and grab 3 loot tokens for each of those 4 days. It isn't required, but I highly recommend you put each day's loot tiles, or each day's loot tokens, in the order noted on the Automa's loot priority list. That looks like this, and you can find it on the Automa Player Aid card or in the Automa rulebook. What putting the loot tokens in priority order does is just quickly allow you to determine what loot Automa and Pilferer are going to take from the island when they get the chance. There are exceptions to this, like characters that change the loot priority, but there are only a couple. And the card displays the new loot priority list right on it. You don't need to rearrange the loot tokens for those characters. Just use the updated list while that character is in play. Another thing worth mentioning is if the Automa gets one of those cards, it doesn't apply to the Pilferer. They'll use the default loot priority list every time. Give the solo deck a good shuffle and draw 6 cards for the Automa's starting hand. Arrange them in numeric order, starting with the lowest card on the left, progressing to the highest value on the right. Now, go ahead and draw those same 6 cards from your deck. Let's go ahead and take a look at this solo deck, those cards right now, and see how they work. The solo deck cards serve 3 distinct roles. First, and most simple, they represent the pirate they're sending to the island. Second, when rotated around, the card represents the Pilferer, which acts like a player for the sake of going to the island and taking loot, but that's all the Pilferer does. It doesn't have a player deck of its own, it doesn't have any abilities, and it doesn't have a reputation marker. The Pilferer loses all ties, so that makes that really easy. The final thing that the Automa cards do, or the solo cards do, is determine which card the Automa is going to play to the island. Let's take a look at how all this works. I think it might help to just take a peek at the gameplay to help put it all together. So in the solo game, you'd play a card from your hand that you'd want to play. Then you'll take the top card from the solo deck and place it on the island with the orange side up. That is the Pilferer. And now let's look at the top. Now we'll look at the top card of the solo deck to determine which card we play from Automa's hand. Let's first walk through the different icons on this left side of the card. This side of the card is the same across all cards. Only the icons on the right will differ. This top line here reads if the 3 loot tokens on this day are all good tokens, all average tokens, or all bad, you'll take the top row action shown here on the right. The second line says if you have 2 bad loot tokens on offer, you'll take this action. This line says if you have at least 1 good and 1 bad, you take this option. You could have 2 good loot and 1 bad, or you could have 1 good, 1 average, and 1 bad. So long as you have at least 1 good and 1 bad, you'll take this action. This line says that so long as you have a good token on offer and no bad, you'll take this action. You could have 1 good and 2 average, or 2 good and 1 average. If you had 3 good, you'd have taken the first option, and if you had a bad in there, you would have taken the second or third option. So yeah, have at least 1 good and no bad, you'll take this action here. The final option is basically the last of the remaining combinations. If you have 2 average and a bad on offer, you take this action. Let's talk about the right side of the card now. This icon shows how many cards from the right you'll go to find which pirate the Automa is sending to the island. This icon shows how many cards from the left you'll go to find which pirate is being sent to the island. And this icon with a cannon means you're only counting cards with a cannon on them under the number. If the Automa's card calls for you to play the second cannon card from the left and you only have one, you play that one. In all cases, you're going to go as far as you're able. In the event the card tells you to play a cannon card and you don't have any, just play the Automa card with the highest value, which, if you ordered them like you were supposed to, lowest to highest, it'll always be the rightmost card. Those are the only instructions you'll see. Play a card this many from the left, play one this many from the right, or do the same but only count cards with cannon icons. Well, I already spoke a little bit about gameplay. Let's get a bit deeper into it. Go ahead and choose a pirate to deploy to the island. Now, play the top card from the solo deck to the island. Remember, this is the Pilferer, so you'll play the orange side up. Now look at the top card of the solo deck. You don't take it or draw it, just look at it to figure out which card from the Automa's hand you're going to put on the island. With our 3 pirates on the island in order, lowest to highest, we're going to start processing the daytime abilities. The daytime abilities trigger from left to right. If the Automa has a daytime ability and it doesn't change anything when activated, the Automa is going to change the value of its card to the number listed next to the no effect part of the card. Let's take a look at the bodyguard, for example. Their card value is 14, but the daytime ability says to discard all saber and hook tokens from the current day and gain 2 doubloons for each loot discarded this way. If that day's voyage doesn't have any saber or hooks, the game state hasn't changed. Nothing's happened. At the end of the daytime phase, the bodyguard is going to have a card value of 29 now. That may place the bodyguard ahead of you, which could mess with your plans for loot, but such is the life of a pirate. For the record, though, the rulebook indicates that a game state change is any change. Players gaining doubloons, a change in reputation, or discarding a card. The Pilferer, by the way, is never going to have a daytime ability. We made it to the end of daytime. It's time to look at dusk abilities. You're going to process this just like in the regular game from right to left. The pirates are going to choose their loot, and when it's your turn to take loot, you can take whatever you want. The Automa and Pilferer both choose loot based on the loot priority list. If you organized your loot tokens during setup in that order, it's easy. Just grab the leftmost token available to them. If you didn't, or if there's a card that has given Automa a new loot priority list, go ahead and take a loot token based on that. The Pilferer, though, is always going to use the standard priority list. Oh, and the Pilferer just tosses their loot that they took right back into the bag. They don't gain any ability for the token they chose, but the Automa does. So make sure that if they draw a barrel or a loot or a barrel or a saber, for example, that they're getting what they should. Again, the Automa will gain those dusk abilities from their loot tokens, but the Pilferer won't. You definitely don't want to play on extra hard mode with that Pilferer offing your on-ship pirates with nighttime abilities. At the end of the dusk phase, your pirate's going to return to your ship. Automa's pirate is going to return to their ship. But the Pilfer's Pirate is going to go right onto the Automa's graveyard tile. In the night phase, you'll activate any night abilities you have, and the Automa is going to resolve any night abilities they have in order of increasing rank. So if their ship is ordered like their hand, lowest to highest, you'll process those night abilities from left to right. Repeat this for as many days as you have left in your voyage, and then we'll do the end of voyage steps. Let's take a look at those now. You can process your end of voyage loot tokens and on-ship pirate abilities in any order. Automa is going to activate their on-ship pirate abilities as normal. When it comes to the Automa loot tokens, you'll process them as normal too, with one exception. If you're playing with the Stormy version of maps and chests, the Automa will resolve chests first. With all of the end of voyage scoring complete, update your treasure tracker scoring dial and return your doubloons to the common loot area. This represents stashing your doubloon hoard safely away somewhere on some beautiful island, I'm sure. Discard all pirates from your ship and Automa's ship unless you have an ability that keeps yours aboard. You and the Automa will have cards they haven't played yet, and it's very likely they're different. It's totally fine. At this point, you just repeat the before each voyage setup and start the next day. That is, unless you just finished your third voyage. In that case, you'll move on to the end of game. Let's take a look at that now, and then we'll simulate a couple of quick days to demonstrate how all of this works. At the end of the third voyage, you'll run through the end of voyage steps, gaining doubloons from loot tokens and character cards, and tally the final score. The richest pirate wins, and in the event of a tie, the pirate with the highest reputation is the winner. And that's all you need to know to solo Libertalia Winds of Galecrest. I'm going to run through a couple of days now to demonstrate how all this comes together. Let's go to the table. All right, let's go ahead and decide what we're going to do here. I am going to play my first mate. Let's see, the Pilfer is nice, playing a number 11, so mine's still out front. Let's go ahead and see the loot we have on offer. We have 2 good and 1 average, which means we are going to be choosing the bottom one because we have at least 1 good. 5 from the left means they are playing their aristocrat. So now we start the daytime abilities here. The aristocrat gains 2 reputation, and my first mate is gonna charge me for all the people that I currently have in the ship, but I had none. So choose the loot now and do the I guess the dawn or the fall. Oh my gosh, the dusk. And I don't know why I took the map tile. I guess just force habit, but yeah, because I like those tiles. The Automa went ahead and drew the map tile first because it was the first available on the left. And then the Pilfer took the remaining saber, but again, they don't process any of those abilities. They just go ahead and toss it right back into the bag, and now that card goes into the graveyard. All right, let's go ahead and look at day 2 here. I am going to play my Gambler, nice high card, and the Pilfer is going to play 12. That could work out. And let's look at the loot. We have 2 average and a bad. So we are going to be doing the bottom option here because 4 from the left, because that's, has a bad one on offer. So they ended up playing their Gambler, and the tiebreaker goes to Automa since their reputation is at the top of the track. So kind of see a tiebreaker. Pilfer has no daytime abilities. I have to pay 1 for my Gambler and put that right back into the pile there. And then that's not a daytime ability, it's an anchor ability. So now we're going this way and checking those out. And the Automa is going to take the first available token in their loot priority. And I'm going to go ahead and take this barrel, not because it's next to the loot priority, but because I don't want that relic. The Pilfer can have it, and they're just going to toss it back in the bag anyway. So this Gambler is going to go onto the ship of the Automa. I'm going to move these cards aside here. And then the Gambler is going to come back to my ship. And then we are on to the Pilfer, which just goes right onto the graveyard tile. All right, we are on to day 3 here. I will play my infantry. and hopefully that'll stay high. The pilfer behind it. All right, let's see. Now we're going to look at what we have on offer, which is 1 good, 1 average, and 1 bad loot. So that's going to be this middle option here because we have at least 1 good and a bad. So we're going to do the first from the right, which is the first mate, which is a high value card. So no abilities there. I am not going to get anything because of the first mate taking that, and then coming back, the first mate's going to take the first loot token there because I put those in loot priority order. So that is already taken care of. For me, of course, I'm not taking that relic, so I'm going to take that barrel, and that pilfer will take that relic and toss it right back into the bag. So the first mate is gonna, there's no nighttime ability, so at this point it doesn't really matter where you put it back, but the infantry is going to go into my ship there, and the pilfer goes right onto the graveyard tile. But yeah, the nighttime abilities I find I usually just put on top. And there you have it. I hope that was helpful, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I will answer those questions just as soon as possible. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Thanks for watching.